Hello and welcome to the SportStatsGuru YouTube channel. My name is Clas and I will guide you through a wide variety of sporting events. You will hear fascinating, interesting, mind-blowing and even disturbing stories from the world of sports. We kick off this series with a look at the marathon race from the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis, the river city. The third Olympics were held in connection to the World's Fair, which celebrated the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase. The Games were largely overshadowed by the fair, which had its own sporting events, including the infamous Anthropology Days, but that's another matter. The 1904 marathon was one of the most controversial events in Olympic history. Despite its massive importance to the Olympic movement with its connection to antiquity, it was nearly discontinued after St. Louis Games. Why was this so? This is what we're going to examine. Here's a quote from the Smithsonian online article of this race. From the start, the 1904 marathon was less showstopper than sideshow, a freakish spectacle that seemed more in keeping with its carnival atmosphere of the fair than the reverential mood of the games. Some of the competitors were experienced long-distance runners, while others hadn't run a marathon before. Two men of the Swana tribe who were in St. Louis as part of the South African World's Fair arrived at the starting line barefoot, which was a bit dangerous when we learn about the conditions at that fateful day. As heat and humidity was grueling, over 30 degrees centigrade, and the course was tough, including several hills from 30 to 100 meters and with steep ascents. The course was strewn with cracked stones, and the runners had to watch out for oncoming traffic like delivery wagons, railroad trains, trolley cars, and the occasional person walking their dogs. To make things even worse, cars carrying coaches and physicians motored alongside runners, kicking up dust. As if this wasn't enough, there were only 2 stops where the runners could drink fresh water. It was a rage back then to test the utmost what a human being could endure. Imagine this being the case in the present Olympic. Len Tao, a member of the aforementioned South African South African team, had endured all these hardships and might have fared better if he hadn't been chased more than a mile, of course, by a pack of wild dogs. Fred Lors, who had qualified for the race by winning a 5-mile show race, eventually began to feel the strain was too much for him. At about 15 kilometers, he hitched a ride with an oncoming car. And he waved to the other runners and the crowd as he passed them by. Thomas Hicks, one of the pre-race favorites, began to suffer from cramps. At about 11 kilometers from the finish line, he was administered a dose of strychnine and egg whites. Yeah, think about that. The first recorded doping incident in Olympic history. However, this was not at all illegal back then. Strychnine was at the time believed to be a stimulant in small doses. While all this happened to Hicks, the aforementioned Lors had recovered from his cramps and rejoined the race. He arrived at the finish line celebrated first. However, as he was to receive his gold medal from the American President Theodore Roosevelt, it was announced that he had cheated. So the boos began to ring out in the stadium. Hicks, meanwhile, had heard that the winner had been disqualified and picked up the pace. He also received a second dose of strychnine and egg whites and a dose of brandy to wash the concoction down. Hicks entered the stadium, staggering, falling over, and nearly didn't finish at all. He was just more or less carried over the finish line. It took 4 doctors more than an hour to revive him enough to leave the stadium. He later said that this was the toughest race he had ever endured. What about Lors then? The man who had hitched a ride during the race with the car. Well, he said afterwards they hadn't intended to accept the honor and only finished the race as a joke. I'm sorry. Well, that was the first episode of sporting stories from SportStatsGuru. Please visit our website at SportStatsGuru.com with a lot more interesting facts about sports and very good stats. Thank you very much for